안녕 친구들. I hope you've been well. I just got done watching episode 6, and so let's go ahead and do a quick video recap of both episodes 5 and 6. I thought about waiting until Friday, but today's Thursday. But I'm going to be busy Friday, and so I thought, why not Thursday and just get it done and over with, so that I'm sure some of you are waiting to just find out what happened on episode 6, because some of the subtitles are lagging still. At least, when I'm filming this. So, all right, let's go ahead. Episode 5, we pick up from that climactic scene where Joong-won, grabs her and then says, I'm here, your safe haven, hide, right? So we pick up from there, and she thanks him, and then she finds herself not being able to let go, and Joong-won's like, let go. And then she tells him that she just, she thanks him, but, she also apologizes for not being able to let go because she's just still afraid. And so to indicate just really how human he's becoming, he takes her by the hand, and then he walks her pretty far distance. And then when they get far enough, he says, hey, is anyone following you? She looks around, she's like, no. And then just to make sure, she detaches herself from his hand, and then she looks around, she's like, nope, and then she kind of goes right back to holding his hand, and he kind of gives her this funny look, and he's like, if there are no ghosts around, why are you, grabbing my hand again? And, of course, then she's like, I'm sorry, it's just, I keep wanting to touch you, and, there's this very cute conversation that they have, of course, as always. Whenever the two start talking, it's always noteworthy, but there's this one scene where he says to her, yes, I know I am this unique, very, special person to you. And then she's like, that's true. But then on the flip side, and this shows us really still that the intelligent Taegong-sil, the one who was number 1 of her class back in high school, and what prompted her, or at least the intellect that got her into that prestigious college, is still around. She very quickly turns the tables on him and says, but, boss, in the same way that you're unique to me, I'm unique to you, because I have the radar that will help you find Kichu. And then he's like, that's true. And so he says, but when I'm not here, you feel like you're just going to die of fear, right? And she's like, yes. And he's like, but when you're not here, and then she goes like this, and she's like, yes. He says, it's more just regret at lost opportunities, perhaps. But of course, he says that as a way to put her down and kind of keep her in her place so that she doesn't realize that she's becoming more and more important to him. I know, Boundary. Sorry. My dog always insists on sitting with me as I recap. So anyway, he tells her, though, during that conversation that every time she touches him, he's going to deduct $100 from her paycheck, or that each touch or, holding of the hand is worth $100. And when he hugs her, it's $1,000. And so he tells her, pretty much with tonight's event, the hug and the hand holding, your monthly wage has pretty much been paid up. And so she's like, surely you're just joking, right? And then you see her very cutely trailing after him saying, Sajanim, surely you're joking, right? Or at least give me a discount or something to that effect. So Joong-won goes home, and then he sees his hand while he's opening the refrigerator, and he comments that holding his hand, and as he thinks back to the night's events, he says holding his hand was cost less than a bottle of champagne. And then he says the hug that he gave her is not even the cost of a refrigerator. And because of the music, you kind of think that he's getting a little bit, nostalgic, or at least a little bit romantic, maybe sentimental, if you will. And then he says, I should have made it much more expensive, right? So, Joong-won is Joong-won. He's just that kind of guy that we are just starting to really love, because he says one thing when he really is probably intending the other. But anyway, Gong-shin, on the other hand, goes home, and she's just really excited that she's finally found a safe haven. And so there's this little stuffed cat that she hugs, and she jokingly says, let me, give you a $100 hug, or a $1,000 hug, $2,000 hug. And she's just very excited that she can finally have the chance of living a normal life now. And she reminds herself not to get too excited about, or not read too much into what her boss did for her that night, because she doesn't want to ruin a good thing and have him misunderstand, or have her misunderstand the signals, and then for him to just completely kick her out of his life, because she really, more than any romantic association, she really wants him for his ghost dispelling properties. So anyway, the next morning they go to work, and there's just all these really cute things about things that happen, but very quickly, so that this isn't such a super long recap. We very quickly find out that the featured ghost for this episode is the dead grandson of Chairman Wang, who is a Chinese, and I didn't pick up whether she was Chinese Korean or whether she was Korean but she was living in China or what have you. But Chairman Wang is in Korea for the time being, and her grandson just passed away, and she is getting this kind of supernatural ghost matchmaker to somehow link her dead grandson's spirit with that of another young unmarried girl, so that because the boy had been sick all his life, and he's now, what I would say, it looked like he was in his early 20s, maybe, I think early 20s is more like it, maybe late teens, but she really wanted to have him get married, or at least the spirit get married, so that in his afterlife he could at least have a wife, if you will, since he died without having had a single girlfriend. Well, he, of course, does not like the new girl spirit that the matchmaker brings, and so the matchmaker is on the hunt for a new eligible bride. And as she goes into Kingdom Mall to visit, and we don't know why she's actually there, she overhears Gong-sil talking to the coffee mania little ghost, who had incidentally followed her. So what I forgot to tell you in my rush to talk about the featured ghost for this episode is that Gong-sil, rushes to the office, and there's this really cute scene where Kang-woo learns from the two little neighborhood boys that she's actually being chased by some really bad people, and that since Kang-woo claims that he likes her, he should protect her. And so when Kang-woo goes out, he sees just Gong-sil talking to somebody, saying, please leave her alone and such. And so he thinks that it's actually this bad guy, and so she chases after pretty much the wind. And then Gong-sil has to fabricate a story of how she is being stalked by a ghost-like stalker. And so Kang-woo offers then to be her personal bodyguard and all of that stuff. But anyway, in the interim, she goes, and it's her first day officially as Joong-won's, what she thinks is going to be the secretary to Secretary Kim's, job. And she's very disappointed to learn that Joong-won has her in this kind of storage room. So they're using it as a storage room, but it was initially intended to be the, I guess, receiving room for VIP guests and such, right? So anyway, on one of her coffee breaks, her first, guest to show up at that office, of course, is the coffee fiend ghost. And so on her coffee break, her first break, she takes him down to the cafe, and then while she's talking to her sister, she orders one for herself and then one for the coffee fiend. So she's walking out, returning to her office after the break, and she's just curious because the coffee ghost doesn't seem to really ask her anything other than for her to buy him cups of coffee, right? So she's talking to him, asking him, how come you don't have any requests for me? You just ask me, for coffee. And that's when the supernatural matchmaker overhears her talking to pretty much thin air, and she realizes we have a human woman who can actually see and talk to ghosts. And so she follows Gong-sil back up to her office, and what's really funny, and the Hong sisters are really good about, wordplay and just, messing with words and such. The sign on her door had said VIP room, I think, and the middle character falls off, and so it now says Ki Shil, which literally can mean ghost room, right? But anyway, so we then find out that the supernatural, ghost matchmaker gets in touch with Joong-won's aunt because they kind of know each other. And the aunt is aware of what this matchmaker does, right? So the aunt then asks Gong-sil to go on an errand delivering this little package to Chairman Wang as, I guess, a condolence gift or something like that. Well, Joong-won finds out, and at first he tells her don't go. And then when he learns that it's actually Chairman Wang and that there's a chance, because he had heard through his VP, that there's a chance that Chairman Wang may be working together or joining forces with the giant mall CEO financially, right? So Joong-won wants to do anything and everything to try to prevent that from happening. And so he thinks that if he can get on Chairman Wang's good side with Gong-sil, then perhaps Chairman Wang will work with him instead of the giant mall CEO. So he tells Gong-sil. At first he was like, don't go. You don't know what's there. My aunt has no business, giving you errands. But then when he realizes that that might be advantageous to him, he says, go. And then she's like, I thought you told me that it was too scary and I shouldn't go. And he's like, it's okay. You have me. And then he spreads his arm wide again. And he's like, I'll give you hugs if you need. And so she goes reluctantly. And then that's when he realizes that's when he learns after he sent her off, while he's discussing the situation with his aunt, that the aunt hadn't actually sent Gong-sil there of her own volition, but that she had sent her there because the ghost matchmaker had specifically requested for Gong-sil. And then that's when Joong-won realizes that there's something a little bit odd about having Gong-sil go to the house. And so he calls her, and he learns from her that when she got there, they asked her to change into clothes. And what they gave her to change into is this very beautiful red Chinese dress. And she says that, I think she says, it's the wedding ceremonial gown or something like that, right? And so Joong-won's on the phone. He's like, why would you change into that? What are you wearing? He's like, take that off. Get out of the house now. And she's like, Sa장님, you told me that this was very important. And so don't worry. I'll find out what I need to find out to help you. And then she hangs up before he can say anything else. And so Joong-won, there's this like moment where he's just looking at the phone and he's like, oh, she hung up on me. And then he decides that he's not going to pay attention. He's just going to ignore the fact. He doesn't care what's going to happen to her. And he says to himself, he tries to comfort himself saying, well, she went there because she wanted to. But then he flashbacks to how she didn't want to go, but that she only went because she knew that it might help him. And so then, against his better judgment, he finds himself going to the house. And when he's there, of course, Gong-sil is nowhere in sight. And the Chairman Wang and her, ghost matchmaker, are in the receiving room. Well, what they did was Gong-sil, as she was talking to Joong-won, had seen the ghost of the grandson, and so she had followed him. And then when she followed him to the grandson's bedroom, the ghost matchmaker had locked her in. And then as Gong-sil is like frantically trying to open the door, the matchmaker had told her, just spend the night and then I'll let you out. And I guess that's their way of then, saying, they're married or wedding night or what have you. And so as Gong-sil looks around, she sees the dead grandson's ghost. And of course he he turns around, looks at her, and then he kind of shakes his head and shows her this really decayed skull head, which freaks her out. So that's really the last that we see of Gong-sil. So when Joong-won shows up, and he's talking to the chairman saying, where's my, I'm here to look for my employee. She says, how important is this employee that the, president of the company would come? And Joong-won's very quick on his feet. He says, about as important as for you to call her especially into your house. And then he says, she's very important to me, so please tell me where she is. And the chairman's like, don't worry, she's being entertained properly as a guest in my house. And then Joong-won's like, by whom? And he's like, certainly by, is it by your dead grandson? And then Chairman Wang knows that he knows something more than what he's letting on. So she just tells him, ignore this and just let me have her for the evening. And Joong-won says, I'm sorry, but I can't allow that. And then he bows respectfully, and then he goes searching through the house. And I will say, from a fangirl perspective, that was pretty awesome. His searching the house for his little assistant, if you will. But what's interesting is he finally finds the house, the room that she's housed in. And there's of course music, and I love the suits and the long corridors. He's rushing through them. And he gets to the door and he commands the servant open it. And the servant is kind of like, but then the chairman shows up and she says, fine, open it for him, right? But then she gives him an ultimatum. If you open that door, then I won't be doing business with you. But if you don't and you leave things as is, then I could actually work with you instead of with the giant mall CEO, right? And so for a second, you see Joong-won debating, should I not, should I not? And then, of course, his business sense wins out, and he decides that he's going to not. And I'm sure part of it is he figures, Kong-shil, if she really needs him, she'll scream, or who knows. His business sense wins out, so he turns around, and he says, well, in that case, literally, as soon as he turns around, Kong-shil opens the door. She's like, 사장님, you're here. And he shoves her face back into the room. He's like, stay there. And then he closes the door. And then he turns around and he says to Chairman Wang, I didn't open the door. She did. And then Kong-shil comes back out. And she's like, 사장님, you're here. And then the ghost matchmaker's like, ugh, everything's been ruined. And so Chairman Wang thinks that, the situation's unsalvageable. And Joong-won is kind of not pleased, to say the least. But Kong-shil just says 할머니, and I love how Kong-shil has no concept of social hierarchy. She doesn't call Chairman Wang. It's always for her 할머니. So, to me that indicates that she sees people primarily on a humanistic level, where Joong-won and other people will see them more on a social hierarchy level. But anyway, Kong-shil says, 할머니, your grandson has a message for you. And the grandmother's like, really, what? And she does this really weird thing where she taps her thigh and then she punches the, air a little bit. And then she says, I'm going to deliver it exactly the way your grandson gave it to me, okay? And then, she kind of scowls, and then she says, hey, Granny, have you lost sense? Have you lost all sense? Why do you keep doing this, right? Just let me live in peace, or let me go in peace. And then he says something to the effect of, and that weird ghost matchmaker, stop telling her to bring all those creepy little dolls, And then he does that little, thigh touch and then the punch, right? And then so the grandmother, everyone's shocked. Joong-won's like, what the heck did you just do? And the grandmother then says, it really is my grandson, and she's thrilled. So during the conversation afterwards, they find out that the grandson hasn't departed yet because there's someone that he wants to meet, and she knows that he hasn't departed yet because this huge bouquet of green roses that he had cultivated hasn't died and withered, even though it's been so long after his death. And so they decide to find his first love for him, and there's this very, I guess, ethical concern that Joong-won has, because Kong-shil, when she realizes that the grandson Chihu may have liked the milk delivery person, she goes down to find out who was the milk delivery person, and she finds out that the previous one had been a boy. And so Joong-won's like, hey, let's not find that, because I can't tell the grandmother that her her grandson's first love was a boy, because he's all about keeping the grandmother happy and trying to, forge together a business deal with her. But Kong-shil says, but that's just not right. And she was telling him that the grandson looked so incredibly sad, waiting for someone who just, won't ever come. And so she says, ultimately the choice is yours. I'll do what you want, but you know, I think we should find the real delivery person, right? And so you see Joong-won kind of debating, what to do. And especially when Gong-sil reminds him that he didn't like it when she lied to him about Hiju. He decides, okay, fine. We'll find the real milk delivery person, but we're going to tell the grandmother that it's like his friend, his really good friend or best friend instead of his boyfriend or what have you. So they go to find the person. And what's funny is that, um, much to Chungwon's relief, it turns out to be a girl. And back when the grandson had been alive, she had had short hair, she'd had a baseball cap, and so everyone mistook her for a boy. So then they asked her to come to the house because Jihu has something that he wanted to show her. And she says that the girl says that she had heard about Jihu passing away, but she doesn't want to go there. And then Gongshi says, but there's something he wants to show you. It's these really pretty green roses. And at that, she drops the crate that she was holding, and then she agrees to go with him. Well, in the meantime, what's hilarious is Tae-dong finds out, and she was doing this weird like CF um weird flying thing in the air and the fire. When you guys see the episode, you'll know what I'm talking about. Just ridiculous little scene, but she finds out through Chungwon's aunt that Taegong-sil had been responsible for breaking up her marriage wedding to the famous soccer player, and so she decides to confront Gongsil about it. And so it's late at night. She's up in front of Gongsil's apartment, going through Gongsil's mail, and I'm just thinking to myself, in the United States, going through someone else's mail is a federal offense, right? So of course Kang-woo takes that as a threat. So the next thing you know, as Idong is like just going through and spewing out vicious thoughts of what she's going to be doing to Gongsil, next thing you see is in much the same way that Jungwon had shoved um, Gongsil's face into the room, you see Kang-woo shoving Lee-Ryung's face against the wall. And he's got her hand extended, behind her back because he thinks that she might be a stalker, right? And then when he realizes it's her, they have this conversation, and then they decide that they're going to join forces. So, yeah, so they're going to try to share information and things like that. But in the process, what's kind of interesting is, remember I had mentioned in episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, that Lee-ryung has this thing for Kang-woo, right? Well, as Kang-woo's looking at this little wound that she has on, I think, this cheek, right? He's peering over, and he notices that it's getting a little red and such, and so she kind of freezes, and yeah. So she's like, "You want a drink?" And he's like, "Well, actually, no." As he got close to her to examine the bruise, because he had said it initially it wasn't going to bruise, but it looked like it was getting red a little bit. She looks at how close he is, and then she feels a little bit of chemistry, so she jerks away, and she says, "Hey, you look younger. How come you're using panmai with me, right?" And then, still using panmai, Kang-woo says, "That's true. You look much older than me. Do you want me to use the honorific form?" And then Lee-ryung's like, "Fine, speak Panmai to me," and it's just really cute, their interchange. So I noticed that in episode 6, their relationship does get a little bit better, and it's one of those things where, as much as I like Kang-woo for Gongsil, I appreciate the fact that Kang-woo is much more himself with Lee-ryung, and because he knows that she knows, his kind of, I guess, she doesn't quite know yet that he's on an ulterior mission, but I feel as though they're much more suited for each other. So anyway, so Joong-won and Gongsil take the milk delivery girl, back to the place, and that's when we see the flashback of how Jihu, the grandson, had met the girl, and as she had delivered one of the milk cartons one day, she had just kind of tossed it on the ground, and the guy had been up above her watering the roses and the rest of the garden, and so he had said, and the grandmother had said that her grandson had this really prickly, very difficult personality, and so she had said that he didn't have any friends. Well, He then sprays her with water, and they start this kind of bickering relationship. So unbeknownst to the girl, Chi-woo really liked her. He just kind of like Joong-won had a really bad way of going about it. He would say always the wrong things. And so one day, as they were walking on the in the garden, she asked about the different types of roses and colors, and then she asked him, is there a green rose, because green's my favorite color, and he's like, yeah, there's a green rose, but it's really ugly like a cabbage. And he's like, kind of like you, how you're ugly. And so she gets all huffy puffy, and she's like, huh, that's okay. I don't like girly guys like you either. And then he leans down, and then he ends up kissing her, right? And then both of them are kind of, it's this, probably the first kiss for both of them. And then, of course, Chu totally puts his foot in the mouth. And he says, I guess it's because you're a girl that, I'm not fazed by this kiss. And then she's insulted, and she says something equally disparaging, and she walks away in a huff. And then she was like, dang it. I stuck my foot in my mouth again. And then after that, that was really their last conversation with each other. Chu gets sick, and as he lies there dying in his bed, he looks over at the bouquet of green roses, knowing that he's not able to show her those green roses and how beautiful they are. And so after the flashback, what we see is of the milk delivery girl looking at the green roses, fingering them, and saying, these are actually really pretty, and he had told me that they were ugly. And as she says that, you get the sense that she realizes now that all of the mean things he had said to her about how she was ugly and all of those things, that he had actually meant them as compliments, that she was actually beautiful and such. So then, you have this kind of moment where Chi-woo's ghost then comes and gives her a parting kiss, and then the flowers wither, they disappear, and then that's pretty much the end of Chi-woo. And so the grandmother then caresses the vase, and then she says, goodbye, my grandson. So we then, after a good day's work, I guess, Kong-shin gets driven home by Joong-won and his secretary, and he offers her a ride all the way to the house, and she's like, no, 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 no. There's someone there that may misunderstand the situation and has been asking me actually a lot of questions about my relationship with you. So no, it's okay. Just drop me off nearby and I can go home. And then Secretary Kim's like, oh, you mean, team leader Kang-woo from the security. And then you get the sense that Joong-won's a little bit jealous. But anyway, what's really cute is as she's like all excited because Kang-woo seems to like her and stuff like that, and how he has offered to be her personal bodyguard. Joong-won's like, are you bragging? And he's like, stop the car now and leave, right? And then so before she leaves, it's so cute because she grabs hold of his hand and she goes like this. And he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, you offered it to me for free, so it seems like a waste not to use it. And then she goes. And as she walks back home the rest of the way, she's still clutching her hand, and she's, commenting on how even though, he's not there, just the lingering effects of his touch seems to give her a lot of comfort and security and whatnot, right? Well, as she's walking though, she's accosted by two men in dark suits, and she's like, what's going on? Who are you? Because they're not ghosts. And then they just grab her by both arms and they say, come with us, please. So she's freaking out. And then, of course, Kang-woo to the rescue, right? So Kang-woo comes and he demonstrates for her as well as the viewers just why he was recruited by Joong-won's father to come and look into Joong-won's affairs. And what I realized after episode 6 in terms of Kang-woo is the fact that as short as it is, because he's only technically staying there for about a month, right, according to his boarding house lease. My suspicion is that the father suspects that something might be on the horizon in terms of the old kidnapping case. Certainly because the statute of limitation is almost up. I think this might be his last push to really discover who kidnapped Joong-won and such. So I don't know, there's a part of me that wonders if it's the aunt, although I don't think so. So it'll be interesting to see who the culprit really is. What would be really heartbreaking is if it's someone who's actually really close to Joong-won. that he now really implicitly trusts. But anyway, so Kang-woo dispatches with the two scary-looking guys, and it's awesome. There's a recent picture of Seo In-guk, the actor, in a magazine called Men's Health. I think Drama Fever had it shown on one of their news feeds. It's hilarious. I think some of you guys should check it out because you kind of realize that the guy's built pretty well. So anyway, he shows how strong he is, how good he is at, bodyguarding and whatnot. And then as he's about to completely disable the two guys, it turns out that the guys were there at the request of the ghost matchmaker, who comes and tells her men to just knock it off. And then she pulls Kong-shi aside to talk with her. And during that conversation, she tells her, you have a light, a very bright light that radiates from you. And that's why all these ghosts keep seeking you out, sometimes to ask you for requests and things like that. And then she warns her, though. She says to her, I did want to warn you that there are some ghosts who are looking for the opportunity to use your body to possess you, and in that way to live the rest of their lives through you, which is creepy because then as she's telling us this, advice or caution, we see Joong-won at home in his office looking at his hand that, Kong-shi had just, caressed in the car. And right behind him in the window, we see the ghost of Hee-ju looking at him, almost biding her time to the time that she can, I guess, talk with him again. Well, afterwards, Kang-woo walks her all the way back up to the apartment, and he had promised to be her bodyguard and such. And when he offered that, what struck me about episode 5 is that the role of the bodyguard really puts some distance between the protected and the protector. And so, bad choice, Kang-woo, because as thrilled as Hong-shit is about that, I get the sense that if that relationship continues, he's going to find himself not able to protect her well. I don't know if that I'm making any sense, but you guys get that whole idea about the bodyguard and how the bodyguard very rarely gets the girl. Although, from media stories, one never knows, right? But anyway, because of what's just happened, Kong-shi tells Kang-woo that although she thanks him for his interest, she thinks that they should just stop here because it's dangerous for him, or that she doesn't want him to find out more things. And then she says, I'm really sorry, but thank you, and she's about to leave. And Kang-woo tells her that, it's not just you who may have secrets, the other party may have secrets as well. And he's like, don't thank me because you then make me feel sad, sorry and such, right? So anyway, I can't remember specifically how that conversation ended, but they, end on pretty okay terms. And you see Kong-shi at the end watching him, and she's like this, and she's like, Kang-woo-shi, I see dead people, and she's like, how do I tell him that? And it's really cute. Well, the next day, she relates all of this to Joong-won, and then Joong-won ends up having her take some things out of the storage and things like that. And in the meantime, what's hilarious is Lee Han-ju, the chatty security guy, is plying all the janitorial ladies with food to tell them that, to tell them about Joong-won and Kong-shi, right? And then that's when he learns from the ajimother that there's a security guy who likes Kong-shi as well, right? So then he goes back to his security office, and then he's telling Kang-woo, the team leader, he's like, do you know that there's a security, person on our team who happens to like Kong-shi? He's like, I wonder what it is about her that sucks men like that. And he's like, who's the idiot? Because Kang-woo said, well, he doesn't just like her. Because Lee Han-ju had said there's a security guy who walks her home, right? And then Kang-woo was like, well, he doesn't just walk her home. They walk to work together, and they, I think, they walk together and do all sorts of things, right? And then Hanju's like, so who's the idiot who's like gotten sucked into her, I guess, charms or whatnot? And then Kang was like, me. And at that point, Hanju just kind of shuts up. And then Kang-woo kind of taps him on the shoulder and he's like, it looks like you need a little bit of, monitoring, right? Anyway, so Kang-woo goes down to talk with Gong-shi, who at that point is carting off some packages that came to be put into the storage room. And he had this little candy lollipop that one of the little kids that he had helped at Kingdom Mall had given him. And so he places that on top of her boxes as a gift. And then he says something to the effect that I like you, I want to get to know you more. I'm going to gather my courage to be able to do so. And he says, you gathered the strength to do so as well. And then he leaves, right? And you're just kind of like, wow, that's such a great, scene. He finally confesses, and Gong-shi now knows that there's a man who does like her, and it's just, she's just stunned on cloud nine or what have you, right? Well, right above them, Joong-won is watching the entire scene. And what had happened was that day at work, Gong-shi had come into his office to tell him what had happened with Kang-woo, and she had told him that she was really depressed, so that she wanted to see if he could give her a ride home because she's not in the mood right now to be able to see ghosts. Because this whole conversation happened because they were debriefing about what had happened, and Joong-won was really thrilled about Chairman Wang agreeing to work with him instead of with the Giant Mall CEO. And then Gong-shi had said, oh yeah, Chairman Wang wanted me to work with her as well. She wanted to take me to China. And then you see Joong-won kind of stop. He's like, so what did you tell her? And then Gong-shi says, my refuge is here, my safe haven's here. I told her no. And so then, of course, Joong-won all smiles. And then she says, yeah, but that's not why I'm depressed. There was something else that really depressed me. And then she tells him about Kang-woo. And so she says that she really wanted to, take advantage of it because she never imagined that someone would like her, right? Well, that's when then at the end she's like, can you give me a ride, because in my depressed state I'm not really in the mood to see any scary ghosts. And Joong-won had said no, right? So right before Joong-won sees her talking with Kang-woo outside of Kingdom Mall, he had told Secretary Kim, and it's so cute the way he says it, he says, today when we leave for work, or when we get off work, we take Tae-bong-shi with us. And he's clasping his hands, and it's just really cute. So after having said that, he walks, looks down, and sees Gong-shi with Kang-woo talking, right? And so there's this great scene where as she's walking outside of the building, along the building, kind of half dazed because of what's just happened with Kang-woo, Joong-won is literally paralleling her, looking at her through the glass wall. And to me, it was symbolic of the fact that he could see her, but he couldn't quite access her emotionally at that point, right? And then he swings around when she walks through the door, and then they kind of face off. And then she sees him, and she then says, 사장님, she's like, he told me he likes me. And then he's like, so are you going to go to him? And she's like, I want to. She's like, I want to go. And then that's how episode 5 ends. So I am way beyond what I intended. So right now it's at 39 minutes. I'm going to stop here, close out episode 5, and then I'll be back for episode 6. So thanks for listening, everyone, and I hope you are enjoying these video recaps. Take care. Bye.